because I find this and I find that. And if everybody does their homework prior to the meeting, you come to the meeting with this worksheet kind of filled in with your thoughts, you can then discuss those at the meeting. That's how you then can come at your deliberations and ultimately make your decision based on the evidence presented. I realize that there's going to be information presented at the public hearing that may be different than the documents that you get, okay? But at least it's a starting point, okay? Starting point for discussion. And that's how you then arrive at your decision, and that's how you then document your decision. Like I said, the decision itself is not the important part, it's the process and how you document that decision, which is the most important in zoning, okay? And I always like this idea of having this worksheet sent out with the packet. You also might want to have a rule in your procedures that says people want to present information to you, they have to get it to you a week in advance of the hearing, so that it can then be distributed to the planning commissioners or the ZBA members prior to the meeting, so you have an opportunity to read things, okay? And come to the meeting prepared, okay? Questions? That'll keep you at about an hour. Let's go an hour. Questions? Anybody have questions? Okay, if you don't,
Brian, I just one quick one there, on presiding evidence there of fact or whatever, you say that you can put in a thing about having it there a week in advance. Do you normally add a period where you can present new information? In the dealings that we've had in the past and the ones I've said, and we've always allowed that, so
you
it's
can do
why
that, yeah.
I'm curious on that.
And, yeah, as long as you can, and at that time, you may be then put in a position that you can't make the decision that night, because you want to be fair and objective and consider everything, so you adjourn it for a month, come back and do your findings of fact at a later date. I have no problem with that, okay? And because this is kind of a new process to you, you might want to consider having one of us involved in the process to kind of walk you through the first couple until you're more comfortable with the procedures, okay?
My understanding is that there's not too many things brought to the planning commission over a year period.
I don't think you have that much activity in terms of, but I think a lot of it, your ordinance went into effect when?
In other words, are you improving some of the stuff?
He can approve uses by right,
Correct.
okay?
By right.
Yeah.
Not
So
special
it
use.
never even gets to planning commission, but before your job was created to do that, was there more brought to the planning commission
No, because this job's always been inconsistent with the,
with you doing it, or whoever you're.
Yeah,
the ones you're gonna have issues are obviously the special use permits and stuff like that.
Your ordinance went into effect in '07.
Mhm.
So, and then we had the decline in the economy, so you might not have the development that would then give you the special use permits, since you were in that, the whole state was in the decline.
In the last 3 years that I've sat on the council, we have dealt with 3 different planning commission or zoning variances in 3 years.
Yep.
Two were in the last year, one was Scott's Garage.
Is that why we can concentrate on the DDA stuff, because hopefully we don't get any?
Again,
I can tell you right now, there's one brewing that will come up really quick.
There was also, the council made a lot of changes to some of the zoning here recently that helped to eliminate some of the zoning variances that were being asked for.
yeah, what you look at, when you have the same kind of variance request constantly coming up, that's a good time to review your regulation, okay? And at that point in time, an amendment to the ordinance may eliminate the need for those kinds of variances, yeah? Which is like what you just.
One of the big ones we did was setbacks on
Yeah.
building structures. That was mostly what everybody was asking for, and because Central Lake, most lots are 50 by
Yep.
75, and the zoning says it must be 100 by 100 per building, unless it was, that's where you started to get into, you couldn't put a house on it with the normal setbacks. So we changed it to, I believe, 5 and 5.
Like when I was building a garage and guest house across the street from my house, when I applied for the permit, they said that the setbacks from the center line of the road,
Generally speaking, setbacks are measured from the right of way. Okay?
right, but it was already, if I did it to my house, it would be on 2 feet, a foot from my front porch.
That's prior to zoning.
Yeah, but they've never been changed. So is that something that
Your
they're
grandfather,
gonna go back and review?
no, your grandfather.
If your structure was lawfully
I'm
constructed
talking about
prior
a
to
brand
zoning.
new one, they.
The zoning had already been changed when you built your garage. It was changed prior to,
Was
2000
it changed from 60 feet to 30 feet or something?
it was, I believe it was 20, 20, and 30, I think it was, or something like that, and it went to 5, 5, and 20.
It was 20, 10, 10.
Okay, and it's like
No,
5
it's
now.
25.
In a village, since you're dealing mostly with platted lots,
No, that's, so
I'll
how does
explain.
it?
It's not from the right, it's where the right of way stops and your property begins,
Right.
so that's when your setback starts.
Right.
People think that they own to the middle of the road, they don't. They
Not-
only own-
not-
Oh, no, I understand, no, I totally understand that.
And it
That
becomes
was the
very
measurement.
confusing on what is the front face of your property.
Yeah, what I'm
It
saying,
changes
is-
on court, it's really.
what I'm saying, there's a whole lot of that confusing supposedly around town.
Well, because I think truly people think they own to the middle of the road, and that's where they basically start their setbacks.
I
It
never
doesn't
thought,
start-
I never thought that, I just thought that the easement was all the way to the center of the road.
No, because the argument is that if I don't own that, then I'm not mowing it, and it creates another whole problem. So,
if you actually look at a platted lot, you've got,
Well, I know the guy came on to my, for the power lines, he came on to my property and just cut the trees, a tree on my property all the way down.
which is probably in the right of way.
you know, what you find in a platted street, that's typically 66 feet wide, the actual pavement is somewhere in the middle, and then you've got right of way. I lived in Bel Air and owned a house right on Broad Street. And when you actually looked at the actual right-of-way width of Broad Street, it came to the carport, that my old house was probably 4 feet from that right-of-way.
Has nobody ever got a
Even though
variance?
I'm
So
mowing
you never,
it,
you never had a variance to build that garage, 4 feet to it?
I got a variance off the back alley. So any other questions?
No Essential Lake, the lot was built, most of the houses, long before
Oh,
zoning ever came in, and so they're
Yeah.
grandfathered on most stuff.
Yep, exactly.
It was quite interesting when I found that out. I stepped off my porch in my house, I was,
Step off your porch,
In the
right
right-of-way.
on the right-of-way. That's common.
That's like, Chris, if I were to ask you, what is your front of your property, what's your front lot, or your front, side of your property? Do you know what that is? You would think it's the one that faces the road, correct?
yeah,
No, it's just one with the shortest distance.
Only on a corner lot.
Only on a quarter lot, okay.
Okay, Brian, now, where does the DDA fit into our newly formed planning commission?
Well,
DDA.
all the statute does is it allows the planning commission to act as your DDA board, okay? So when the group of people are meeting as the DDA board, you apply DDA requirements, so you do your DDA stuff. And when the group of people are meeting in the form of the planning commission, then you do the planning commission. It's no different than the village council. You meet as a village council, then they meet as a ZBA, okay? Maybe the same individuals, but they have different functions. So there's no real blending of the two positions. You're just having the same individuals act as both.
It's not one meeting with
Yes.
both agendas,
Right.
it's two
in
separate
other
meetings.
words,
separate meetings.
so
Or
you
you
have
have-
one meeting and then you adjourn, then you start your other meeting.
Yep, that's what I would do.
What
That's-
you said
yeah.
last time that you came here.
They can do it at the same meeting or the same time, okay? But technically, they're meeting, the planning commission is meeting as your ZBA, or as your DDA board, okay? And so, if you wanna call it the same meeting, I really don't care. We're gonna have planning commission agenda items and DDA agenda items. Whether it's the same meeting or different meetings, I don't really care.
So the minutes would be separate?
No, you'd have the one set of minutes, okay, but then you're dealing with planning commission issues here and DDA issues.
So you don't have to
Well, one
adjourn.
agenda
Just
is
like
one.
that.
Yeah, I think
One at a
that's,
time, you're not
yeah,
gonna-
that's.
Well, I feel
that's
like
one
just
more
like the
section.
council agenda,
And
first it's
the-
new business, then it's older one,
Yeah.
so it's first we do DDA, then we do planning or
Yeah,
whatever.
mhm.
Right.
Yeah, I think the other one's form over substance, where you actually adjourn and then reopen the new meeting, that's form over substance.
I say, back in the first meeting when you were here, it was a very blunt question that was asked, is it two separate meetings where you adjourn, you call one to order, then you adjourn, then you call the other to order? And your exact answer was, no, you do just one meeting and go.
One meeting ago, no.
Okay,
Okay, because the statute allows the planning commission to be.
so you don't adjourn in between meetings?
I would not.
Okay.
Okay.
You would just have
I want
two
to say
separate
it
minutes.
twice.
Cool.
Ask me the third time, I'll give you a third answer.
I'm just, when they act as, they still have to follow the confines of the DDA Act and the
Yep.
Planning Commission Act.
Exactly.
So then let me ask, I'll give an example, I guess. We have flower beds in the downtown area, which the DDA has been tasked with taking care of.
Okay?
3 of them flower beds fall outside of their district. So
Okay.
now if they fund and they take care of the ones inside,
Right?
can the planning commission spend money to take care of flower beds that are not in that?
No,
So the village, in a sense, is still stuck with 3 flower beds to take care of.
exactly.
Or the village should just stay and take care of the permits and get the DDA.
That wasn't the question.
Or you
but, yeah, I
get a
mean,
volunteer to do it.
That's what I said. I think the
So,
DDA has
and-
more important things to worry about flower beds.
But, well, it's,
No, the planning commission is basically making decisions. You can't get around the DDA district because it's a planning commission, if that's your question, no.
so what can the planning commission legally spend money on?
There's really no need for the planning commission to spend money, okay?
And I only asked that because that was a question that was posed at the last council meeting.
Technically, it's really not the planning commission that's spending the money, because to the extent you need to do notices and here, and public notices in the newspaper, Scott's gonna be sending that into the, or someone, or Rachel could be sending that into the papers for publication, okay? So you're really not, the planning commission doesn't spend money.
The DDA can.
DDA can within.
And only within their boundaries though. So essentially what the
That's right.
council did at the last meeting was we just reformed a board.
That's all you did.
It's,
You're
yeah,
having the same bodies be both, basically.
nothing's changed.
And it's my contention is that ultimately you can't separate the two. The issues that we deal with in a small village impacts the rest of the village.
There will be those, yeah.
And I think that it's best if everybody is in the same room, and that's why I advocated this. That everybody's in the same room, understanding everything that's going on, as opposed to one doing this and one doing that.
But you can't use the planning commission as a means to extend the jurisdiction of the DDA. That's not
No,
fine.
no, that was not the
Never
intention.
intent.
No,
Not- that was the intent.
I think there was entrapment, they just wanted the people in the planning commission.
All right.
But we had the people for that.
We've got an issue.
I'm just
We've
messing
got
with you.
somebody
It
that,
doesn't matter.
that wants to put in a
We done figure
business.
out.
They haven't told us,
Okay,
but they wanna do it in what is R1 on Main Street.
okay,
A whole block, 3 houses.
Yep.
They're seeking approval for that, which we're gonna meet with Friday to find out what they're actually asking for.
mhm,
It's gonna get recommended that they go to the planning commission.
right,
And from that, I'm sure it's gonna end up coming to the ZBA because it's an R1 and they want a business
okay,
designation. Now, a downtown development authority sitting there, all the same voices, ears, is saying, wait a minute, we want business downtown as opposed to outside of our district.
well, here, let me address this real quick, because I've talked at, I think it may have been you briefly. You gotta be careful when you have an R1 district, and you then want to allow a business to go into the R1, if you try to then rezone that to a commercial use, that's spot zoning, okay? You gotta be careful of that. And so again, the planning commission will then be applying zoning principles when it looks at whether to allow the requested rezoning. If it goes to the ZBA for a use variance, that should be denied, because the R1 regulations on that property, you still be able to use the property for an R1 purpose, okay? Put a single-family dwelling there, okay? The only reason it doesn't work is because they don't want to use it as a single-family dwelling. They want a business, okay? So the appropriate the appropriate response, based on my limited facts that I have, is they need to find a different piece of land that fits within the zoning constructs of the village, so that you are, remember, you've got a master plan that's out there. You want an orderly development of your village as opposed to an ad hoc development. So just because someone wants something, if you properly apply zoning principles, they may not get what they want. That's the whole concept of zoning.
Let's say hypothetically, this piece of property in the master plan calls for possibly changing.
If the master plan calls for this area to eventually become commercial, okay, then that's perfectly fine. This may be the first property that's currently zoned residential that would then turn into a commercial use, okay? There's always gotta be someone that's first, but if it's consistent with your master plan, that this whole area eventually is going to be into the commercial, then I don't have a problem with rezoning in commercial. That's not spot zoning, because even though they're first and they're gonna be one isolated parcel surrounded by residentially zoned property, it's the first step in the implementation of your master plan. See the difference?
So now when that comes to the planning commission, if it does, as Larry said, that you have the DDA saying that they want the business downtown or whatever, but then into the planning commission, they're the same board. When they meet to discuss this, truly, they can't use the principles of the DDA at all, and they have to go by findings of fact. Correct? Okay. So the DDA wouldn't truly have anything to do with
Okay,
that procedure then.
well, A,
At that
does
point,
the,
at that point.
the people that are applying for the
At all,
variance,
can't be.
right,
I don't know, do it, I have no idea
It's
what's,
not a there.
it's not a variance.
they're trying to get it rezoned.
That's not a variance.
Yeah,
No, it's,
that's different.
you gotta start with a special
Should be
use.
special
first.
use.
That's, okay. To cut to the chase, let's say that we rezone it,
Okay,
and then they change they say it's gonna be used for X business.
okay,
Okay. And then when they go ready to build it, because it also fits the criteria because of the zoning, right? And they say, well, I'm gonna go from a architectural firm to a retail
Okay, yeah.
operation. Because you approved it for this, but you approved it as R1, I mean, to
commercial,
commercial. Can they change it? Because
yes,
in
yes and no.
Manio, North Carolina, Andy Griffith, right, the town of Manteo, Food Line wanted to come in. And how they played the bait and switch is they buy the property, right, say we want it rezoned.
Terms and
They
conditions
build a
of the-
food line, and they build a parking lot for 400 cars. There's no damn way that food line is gonna have 400 cars in it ever. So then they go in later on and say, we already zoned for commercial, so we're gonna have a bunch of strip stores. They decide to help supplement the income of a food line, right? And so how they got them is saying, to kick them back and throw them out of town, is they literally, because they said, well, you can't throw us out of town, you can't do this, you can't restrict us.
Here's the problem. When you rezone land to a district, okay, you are authorizing any use on that property that is authorized in that district, okay? Now, if the master plan calls for this area to become eventually commercial, that might be fine, okay? Because that's, again, consistent with your master plan.
What happens if they get the commercial zoning,
Okay,
and then they just change the type of business there?
they have the right to do that.
As long as it's within the parameters.
Right,
of
so they
commercial.
could lie to us, right, and then,
Well,
You can put can't you put a contingency on the special use zoning, which they, I believe at the end of that, it said
no,
conditions of?
let me, no, the way you do that, and again, I'm not suggesting that this is appropriate, given, because I haven't looked at your master plan. But Michigan law allows for what they call conditional rezoning, okay? And conditional rezoning appropriately done, says that in this district, call it the commercial district, I got 1 through 10 uses that are authorized, okay? The property owner it has to be a voluntary condition being offered by the property owner. It cannot be imposed by the municipality, okay? If the property owner, because they have a better chance, can perceive that they have a better chance to get the rezoning, they say, I wanna go to commercial, okay? But I voluntarily offer that I will only use this property for use A, okay? Even though A through Z may be authorized in the commercial district. If it's voluntarily offered by the property owner, then the village can rezone that property as a conditional rezoning, okay? So the only use authorized on the land under this conditional rezoning is use A, all right? And then if it's not developed specifically as use A within, say, 18 months, the statute says that the property then automatically reverts back to its original zoning, okay? That's conditional rezoning, I think properly applied, okay? And so that's an option, but it cannot be imposed by the municipality. It has to be voluntarily offered by the property owner. And typically they do that because if they say, I want commercial, and then the municipality realizes A through Z theoretically can be placed on the property owner may say, well, I really don't have a chance of getting this through. So to enhance my abilities to get it through, I only want this use, okay, because that's what my plans are, and so you conditionally rezone it. It's a political move by the property owner to get a better chance of getting the rezoning through. That's all.
What I'm saying is how they beat them in Manning, North Carolina, is they said, okay, you have to have, for every square foot of shopping space, you have to have so many parking
Yep,
spaces.
that's typical.
And so what they did is to stop them, is they said, you can only, because you only got a 20,000 foot grocery store, then you only need 100 parking spaces.
Right?
And what they were gonna do is put 500 parking spaces and build the store and then come back later and say, you gave me the zoning, so I'm gonna add.
It's hard to analogize.
It was a bait and switch that they were trying to do.
But I don't know what that state's laws are, so it's kinda hard to.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if they tell us, I gotta come back to this because I'm confused, is, if they say it's gonna be used for one thing,
Right?
right, and we give it as a commercial
Mhm.
zoning, and then they change it to another type of business that maybe we wouldn't want, right?
But they're allowed to do that.
Right, so they could lie to us.
Yep, they could.
Or run business for a year and decide that, geez, well, we're gonna change.
Brian, at the end of page
Yeah,
4
it just
on
looks
this,
like
it says
that.
conditions if any.
It just looks
So
like.
what, is that on?
That's a special use
It's
permit.
an architectural firm, it looks
Has
like
nothing to do with rezoning,
Okay,
okay? That's an administrative decision that you can then condition,
okay.
okay? It's not a legislative, rezoning is a legislative decision.
And then my other question be is, as a planning commission, do they actually grant the variances, or do they recommend to the council, then the council grants the variance?
Planning
Or,
commission has nothing to do with variance.
not variance, special use or whatever?
Special use permits are approved by the planning commission, period.
Okay,
Nothing to do with council.
okay.
Okay, I thought the planning commission recommended that
Nope.
the village board.
Unless your ordinance says otherwise.
And for some reason, I'm thinking it always came back to the council and everything we've
It's
done so far.
possible, let me look.
I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking.
That's
it did.
unusual, but that's possible. Let me look. I will look.
I was under that impression.
Pardon me?
I was under that impression that.
Let's see.
We've both been wrong once before.
You thought that, didn't you?
A special use permit, if the planning commission decides to grant a special use permit, or are they just recommending it to the village council for approval? Who actually has the ultimate authority to make that decision?
And maybe I'm thinking of the variance side of it, because that's more what I've dealt with is the variances than I haven't dealt with the special use one yet, so.
Then we come back to
Your
the
ordinance
board because the
provides,
board is the
Yeah.
ZBA.
your ordinance provides that the planning commission makes the decision on special use permits.
Okay,
Does not go to the council at all.
okay.
What I'm saying is, because that property is out of the DDA, right? And it affected the downtown businesses,
Strictly
criteria.
Based on standards, yeah.
You can't even use that.
No,
You have to do it by findings of fact. The fact that you're on the DDA and you have a business downtown, you can't even
Well,
consider.
also.
You
the
do, don't
business
get me
no
wrong,
longer would
because
have
you're
to
human, but
consider-
you're not supposed to.
They're gonna present themselves, the neighbors and the.
It depends on if they present evidence that's relevant to your decision. It's not a popularity contest.
Well, when you
It
said
goes back to-
99.99% get shut down.
Use
anyway,
variances,
right?
99.999% need to be denied. Dimensional variances on a planning, or for a ZBA, 90% should be denied, okay? Special use permits are different, because that depends on whether the actual affirmative development meets the criteria for approval. So there's a lot more that those you are approved.
And we'll give you a call.
That's what I'm here for. Anything
Really?
else?
He's got it written out nicely, that's what we've
Okay.
got before.
Yeah.
You follow,
Really nice.
you follow it out, and that's what we've done on most of ours that we went through. We followed it out.
Once you get comfortable with the process, it's much easier.
I think we can hand help first.
Well, if I had a hand, I would hold it, okay?
Nice one, Chris.
Thank you very much. I'll be here all week. I want you to know, I was in the Court of Appeals, and I was actually arguing a gun case in the Court of Appeals. And I got done with my argument, and I was packing up my material, and I said to the judges, I want you the court to know that I'm unarmed. They sat there and probably about 3 or 4 seconds, and then it dawned on them that I was making a joke, and then, oh, an attorney with a sense of humor.
Okay, now, this planning DDA that we have created does not become effective until March 31st, next week,
20 days.
20 days after it was enacted, which was the 11th.
So you can't record this.
So, my question to you is, there's only 5 of the 7 planning commission members here. Could they call a meeting tonight to select a chairperson?
No,
Yeah,
it's
the
been
board did.
noticed.
Well, it was noticed, it publicly noticed that we were having this, and public was invited.
Or was it, I'd have to see the notice. I'd rather have you do it at
Okay,
a different
that's-
meeting and post it appropriately, just to be on the safe side.
That's fine, okay. But I wanted to know.
Anything else?
Can we pick a meeting date out tonight?
It's
And
scheduled.
then post it.
While we have 5 of us here?
Sure.
Sooner the better.
Well, you pick your 31st date and something thereafter.
Or April 1st, that's the first Wednesday when the DDA was having its.
You really want to meet on
meetings.
April Fool's Day?
That's
There's all kinds of stuff gonna be.
You think of that too?
I flew to Washington on Friday
I-
the 13th, and I gave you
If
September
You
13th.
5 are the members, so.
31st?
If I'm saying that, if they don't become a planning commission until the 31st or whatever, that is 20 days
You still
after.
you have a constituted planning commission, okay? You have 5 members, that's already been in place.
But they don't come into effect for 20 days, right?
The 7th member doesn't.
First works
Right.
for me.
You still have a 5-member
We were all
planning
doing
commission.
this.
We still have a planning commission, though it's down to 2 members.
That's for me.
But not this coming Wednesday? Not the first?
April 1st.
Yeah.
Which they've only got.
I
Four then,
think I-
actually.
I think I have something out of town first, not sure. I'll check.
And unfortunately, not to point, well, Bill's in outside of the village, so he doesn't actually come into play until that comes into play in 20 days after that.
Alright, so the 31st is not good for Corey, the 1st is not good for you.
First or third, I think, is around my thing is. But it might be okay, it might be.
Second, okay?
Second?
I won't know anything until this Friday, but I won't know until last minute.
April 2nd is a Thursday. Thursday? 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 You don't know?
I won't know, here's the, April 1st might be fine, but I won't know until, I can't make that decision right now. I won't know until like Thursday.
Bill, what about you? First or second is good?
Second, so what you shoot for?
I would shoot for the second.
I'm a communications major.
Everybody good on the second?
7 PM?
I won't know until Thursday.
Okay, well,
Where do you have your meeting?
Right here.
Check your calendar.
7 p.m. Thursday, April 2nd.
Yeah, we need your gun there.
Eventually
Which
you
I
will.
don't think we're just in the wither.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is.
If I don't show up, I don't
We
get in
can
trouble, or
adjourn.
if I don't show up, I'm gonna ask why I'm there.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for.
No, you
What,
didn't.
what was the, what's been the date historically for the planning commission?
The first Wednesday.
It's probably a good
Well,
idea.
that's-
Well, that's what,
Fine, that's-
I think that's what we should do after this meeting, because everybody's used to that date.
But right now, the planning commission only meets quarterly, too,
Well,
so
we're
you
gonna
guys
have to
gotta
change
change
that.
that.
Have to change that. at-
Which I think this one would be a quarterly meeting anyways, wouldn't
Right,
it? April's would, so.
okay.
Meeting dates.
Square on
Meeting
April
dates,
2nd at
times,
7
and all
o'clock.
those things have to be done. We need a chairperson, you'll need a
Next meeting, we'll
secretary.
figure out that stuff.
Yep.
Okay. Are we
We
officially
need-
adjourned? Someone adjourn the meeting? Turn the camera on.
We're not, because we're on the official.